Rowe-Cross, and she's in the back waiting to be introduced. Major Nathalie Patterson, could you stand, please? Major Patterson is from the St. Pete Police Department, and I believe you are the head of the Human Trafficking Division, is this correct? Okay, so she will have a moment to speak. Once these fine people that are our guest speakers are able to see Niki speak, and that's why I have them on two tables by themselves with their guests, they will go up to the stage or call them up to their table here where they have microphones. There will be this microphone that I have will be on this stand, so you're welcome to approach and ask your question. I'd like everybody to hear the questions, and then the ladies will be able to give the answers to the questions. Thank you, Major Patterson. I have Connie Rose. She is from the Sela Foundation, Sela Freedom, and a lot of the things that you have brought tonight and donated kindly out of your heart, like Valencia Lakes always comes through, will be going home with her. Okay, so she's here, and she is the Development and Fundraising Manager, and she will also be one of our speakers, and I'll have her up on the stage. She has a short PowerPoint presentation. Niki's is a little bit longer, okay? And with her is Jackie Corley. Thank you for being here. And Jackie is also from Sela Freedom, and I don't know your role, my dear. She's the development coordinator for Sela Freedom, and they do a lot with those that have been rescued from human trafficking, sex trafficking, sales over and over again to make money. It's a money-making organization, human trafficking. Leah Kerrigan, thank you, Leah, for being here. She is from St. Petersburg, and she is with an organization that she started called Restored to Dream, and she is their development director as well. She will be up here and be able to address a little bit of what they do. Thank you for being here. Along with her is Amanda Ribershaw. Amanda is the director of operations for Restored to Dream. And I'm sure that you two ladies work very closely together at that organization. Luann Rostoitzer is the president of our local CAHT. She was supposed to be here tonight. Okay, I hope you were able to see that. I had a little trouble bringing it up on a full screen. There are her books, like Daddy used to say, over on the table over here. She'll be sitting there a little bit later for you to purchase her book if you wish to. It's a $15 donation to her organization. And if you read the little write-up on it, and I know it might be hard to see from the back, since 1994, this woman has either helped rescue, or has helped get back to life 10,000 people. She's an amazing woman. I am so fortunate to have met her several years ago when I heard her talk. And that's why I invited her here. I think you're going to be just blown away by some of the things that she is going to share with you. And that. So without further ado, let me go up on the stage so we can properly introduce her to you. And she lives in Largo. I do not know specifically if that's where she was abducted when she was 15. So she is a survivor. She's not our age, but she has a little bit of age on her since she started this ministry and that. And STAR, S-T-A-A-R, and you have a piece of paper on your tables. It has the URL. It is the login for her organization so that you can donate. She's in the process of doing the song that you heard when you were coming in is a song she wrote and recorded, and she's doing a documentary right now. This is just the trailer for it. So if that information grabs you, hopefully when the trailer is done, I'll be able to get it for you and actually show it to you. How many were here the last 2 times I showed The Sound of Freedom? Well, there's not as many as I had hoped would show up. That is on international human trafficking, for the most part. And if you saw that, the little boy that he first rescued within the United States, or in Mexico, was only 7 years old, and he was sexually abused. And his sister wound up in Nicaragua or Cartagena in South America, and that's where she was finally rescued by Tim Ballard. And in the movie, of course, there's an actor playing his part, but she was rescued by him. He was not going to give up on her. He quit his job with the FBI to do this because that little boy that he rescued just grabbed him, and he has a whole family. So it's just a great story, and I know the ones that were here actually needed Kleenex in a couple of spots because it hits right here, especially for women who are mothers. It does hit right here because it showed how these children so easily can be abducted. It has happened in Ruskin, it has happened in Wynalma, and I don't know if Major Patterson has any statistical base on her area up in the Tampa, St. Pete area, but it's just an interesting topic to know the numbers, if you will. And there was just a lady that was shopping with her daughter who was 11 or 12 in Ruskin, and this woman was kind of following them around the store. This is why you have to keep a tab on your children, because they can wander off and go looking at something, and you might be in another aisle, they're in a different aisle, and they wind up not seen again, if you will. So she heard her on her cell phone, and she mentioned a couple of things that gave the mother a flag. And she went to the manager with her daughter, and they did find this woman again in the store and escorted her out. So it's happening right in our backyard, and this is the other reason why I wanted to bring her here to share her story. And without further ado, I will introduce Niki Rowe-Cross to you.
Very kind words. You know, she was talking about statistics. And we always think about other countries. The United States is the #1 trafficked country in the world. And I've got some statistics that I've printed out just for the first couple of months of this year. In Thailand, in 2015, it was recorded 366. That's dropped to 73. Mexico, 2015, 209. That's dropped down to 14. Guatemala, it was 428, and now that's 376. But this is the one I really want you to get. In 2015, United States, in the first 2 months, it was 1,222 reported trafficked. In the just 2 months of this year, it's already been reported, and I'm saying just reported, there's probably many, many more. 2,896,000 people in the United States. How sad. How sad. If anybody has any problem understanding me, I'm just a country girl, so anybody speaks redneck, raise your hand. Oh, where's my little, there we go. Off to a rocky start. Okay, so Star Ministry. Let me tell you how Star Ministry got started. I had been, well, it's a long story. You need to buy the book. Basically, as a child, I was abducted. Not abducted. I was abused by a family member, but I never told because there was so much shame that was attached to it. I was told, your daddy won't love you anymore. My daddy was my idol. I was told, they won't want you in the house. They'll think you're dirty. They'll think you asked for it. See, these people, they know the things to say to get inside the head of these victims. So, now I'm going to go back about a few things. In my book, there's some things that have changed. One, in the book I talk about my mother and my sister. They have both passed. I talk about my adoring husband. He turned out not to be so adoring. In fact, the night before I buried my mother, he said, well, there's no time like the present. I'll tell you now, our marriage of 22 years is over, and after the funeral, I'm leaving. That was the way our marriage ended. So when you read the book, the other thing, I had some head trauma that happened, and I started rehabilitation. And one of the things they did was music therapy. And my daughter called me one day and she said, Mommy, you couldn't have been trafficked at 15. And I said, I know that I was trafficked. You've talked to Chrissy, the girl that helped rescue me. And she said, yeah, but I've got all your wage statements from when you worked when you were 15. So I got to thinking about this. And I was in music therapy one day. And this song came on from Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And I will never forget, it hit me like a bombshell. She was right. I was not 15. I was on the verge of turning 17. Because when I Googled, when did Crosby, Stills, and Nash play in Greensboro, North Carolina? They only played one night, November 12th, 1977. So I just want to make sure that those things are correct when you read the book. I started Star Ministry in 1994 after I had gone through several changes of my own. And the reason I did this is because I felt like I needed to pay it forward. Is this going to work? Guess not. It doesn't like me. Ah, there we go. So why do we have places like Star Ministry, Sail of Freedom? It's develop healthy relationships with mentors, human trafficking advocacy groups, church law enforcement, restore relationships with family and children, help them get housing, employment, ID, driver's license, help them get transportation, rebuild their self-esteem, and to eventually become survivor leaders and help others. Okay, can you play the first video? First one, yeah. No, go back.
It's a video?
It's a video. right there. Okay, when you click on that little button, double click. And give it a minute. It's not playing? Sorry about this, folks. It was working at home. Okay. How many of you know what PTSD is? Post-traumatic stress syndrome, or post-traumatic stress disorder, however you want to word it. I made a bumper sticker that says, soldiers, survivors, different battles, same outcome, PTSD. And it's true. PTSD attacks us when we least expect it. The same thing with Stockholm Syndrome. Well, since we can't show the video, I'll tell you the story about what Stockholm Syndrome is. Stockholm Syndrome was it was named in 1973 because a group of guys went into a bank in Stockholm and they held 6 employees captive. At the end of the 7 days, when they rescued these people, the police were surprised that when they wanted to get the bad guys out, the people that had been held captive wanted to protect them. They had developed what is now known as Stockholm Syndrome. They even went as far as when they went to court, they raised money for their bail. That is Stockholm Syndrome. Okay. Yeah. Okay, moral injury. How many know what that is? I didn't think so. You know what it is? No? Moral injury is something that I was very privileged to be a part of working on. There were some clients that I had that I noticed they didn't react the same way as someone with PTSD. When this one in particular, when I talked about how she worked with a client, she would get completely angry and just talk through gritted. So I started working with some psychologists over at the, what's the military? Bay Pines, thank you. And we started connecting notes. And we were sitting in this little round table, and I was telling the story about how this girl, she had been trafficked, and her pimp found out the old man that she was seeing, he had a lot of money. He didn't want to touch her. All he wanted her to do at the end of the night was just stand at the foot of the bed and dance. So the pimp told her, or the trafficker told her, he said, when you go in there tonight, he said, what you're going to do, he said, you're going to make him think you're going through the same routine, but you're not. When he's distracted, you're going to take the telephone hook off the cradle, and you're going to beat him in the head until you knock him senseless. And she said, I don't want to do that. He's a really nice man. He said, who cares what you want? I'm telling you, it's either him or you. What's the choice? What do you think she chose? So she beat him up. Took the telephone cord, wrapped him up. They robbed him. He went in intensive care, and 2 months later, he died. Similar note, we have a soldier who's telling his story about being in Afghanistan. Talking about how they're doing recon in this little town. And they get to this one area where they know that there's There's definitely some problems going on. And this guy sees this little kid about 4 years old, starts running toward him about a football field away. And he's thinking to himself, he said, something's up with this. Something's not right. And he said to himself, he said, I know what I'm going to do. He said, as the boy got closer, he saw he had a grenade in his hand. And he said, I'm going to take one for the team. He said, I'm going to throw myself on top of the kid and blow myself up with him and save my troop. But as he got closer, he's got the bead on him, like the commander told him to, his CS told him to. And he's standing there and he's thinking, you know, I'm going to do this. I don't want to die, but I'm going to do this. And about that time, his commanding officer said, pull the trigger. And he did. And he killed the little boy, just as he had his finger in the pen about to pull it out. This man wrestled hard with moral injury because he did not want to kill a little child. And that's what moral injury is. It's doing something that your moral compass would tell you never to do in a million years, and yet you still do it because there is threat of injury to yourself or others if you don't. A lot of times we have, and I'm sure Major Patterson can tell you, you'll have people that they arrest. They think, oh, they must be on drugs, they must be high, something's going on. A lot of time it's moral injury. CTE. How many of you saw the movie Concussion with Will Smith? Great movie. If you had a chance to watch it, watch it. CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. The definition of that is basically when the brain has taken too many blows, it just can't sustain it. And that's the cause. Symptoms, they are erratic. And the man who identified it was a man named Bennett Amalu, which I was fortunate to talk with and confer with back and forth. And I told him some of the symptoms about some of the clients I was working with. And I said, do you think this could be CTE? And he said, have they ever been hit in the head with large iron pipes or, you know, hard items or cast iron or anything like that? And I said, yes, they have, several times. And he said, it's probably CTE, but unfortunately the only way I can diagnose it is through an autopsy. CTE, they will fight you, they will love you the next minute. They will tell you you are the worst thing that ever walked God's earth, and the next minute you're the best thing since heaven. They flip back and forth. And I'm sure, as I said, Major Patterson has taken people to the station thinking they have got to be out of their skull on drugs. And when the drugs come, when the report comes back, they're clean. And they're acting like, you know, they're totally out of their skull on drugs or meth, cocaine, heroin, what have you. But it's actually CTE. And what do you do about it? Well, there's not much you can do except treat them gently and treat them kind. Deep fake porn. We've heard a lot about this lately. How about you? No? No? Deep fake porn. I was first made aware of deep fake porn about 3 years ago. What that is if you put an image of yourself, a child, or anyone you know on Facebook or a social media platform, people can steal that image and artificial intelligence, and they can put it on the body of an actor or an AI, which is artificial intelligence, and turn it into a porn film. Our own state senator, Lauren Book, was one of the first victims this happened to. And, but they've taken it a little bit further. How many of you have ever heard of the silicone blow-up dolls? Well, now what they're doing is they are creating them to be childlike with all the parts, if you know what I mean. But they took it one step further. If you upload the picture of the person or the child that you want to molest, they can make this silicone doll look exactly like the person that they want to rape. And it is illegal, thank goodness, in the state of Florida. There's only 4 states. Looking for the states here. Florida, Tennessee, South Dakota, and Hawaii. And we're hoping that Wisconsin's coming on board soon. And if you ever get, if you have Netflix, if you ever have the chance to watch the movie American Nightmare, watch it. It will blow your mind. How the legal system, this woman was kidnapped, and they didn't believe her. And I'm not going to give the story away. But anyway, I'm going to roll back a little bit. What started Star Ministry? Star Ministry started in 1994. You know what, let's just cut this PowerPoint off. I'm just going to ad-lib. Yeah, I'm just going to ad-lib. I'm just going to do it like I did in the old days. It's much easier that way, right? Pardon? Yeah, just cut it off. So in 1994, how many of you remember the genocide of Rwanda? Yeah, so do I. And I can remember crying day and night, day and night, day and night, thinking about these poor women who were virtually, literally being raped by 200 men at a time that were known to be HIV positive. One woman, 200 men. They took machetes and hacked their arms off, their limbs off. It was so bad that they said that literally there was mountains of bodies in the street. You couldn't even drive down the roads, it was so bad. As I watched this, I thought to myself, I said, you know, I want to go to Rwanda, I want to do something, I want to stop this. But I was in no way able to go to Rwanda. But I thought about, I said, but there's something I can do. I had recently returned from Nashville, Tennessee. You know, I'm kind of going all over the place, aren't I? I'll get there in the end. It's a little hard to talk about this today because there's some things that have happened since the last time I stood on stage. My husband left me. I broke my leg in 3 places. A week later, I was almost sexually assaulted. My house was almost broken into. My lupus flared up, and I found out that it was affecting my heart, my kidneys. I was traumatized, and nobody came. All of these people that said they loved me, they were going to help me, not one person showed up. And I was left alone. And it's one of those things that kind of make you take stock of what life is all about. Anyway, so in 1994, I started Star Ministry, and I started working with one victim. And she was a girl that went to my church. She was a little 15-year-old girl. And I heard some people out on the sidewalk talking one night. They said, "Did you hear about Elle?" You know, we never use their names. As Connie will tell you, we try to use letters because you never know who's listening. You never know who's related. You never know who knows this person. You never identify them by name. You usually use a letter, like, have you talked to Elle today? Have you talked to Jay? Elle, these women were talking about, they said, "Have you heard what Elle has been doing? She's been at that trailer park and she has been sleeping with men for money." And as soon as they said it, it snapped in my brain, this girl's being trafficked. So when I left there, I asked my daughter, I said, "If you don't mind," I said, "can we ride through there?" Because she had gone to school with this girl. I said, "Do you mind if we ride through there and see if we can find her?" Long story short, the girl had been abused by her stepfather. Her mother didn't believe her. She kicked her out, and she was being trafficked. So I brought her into my home. Rule number 1, don't ever do that. It's a big, big mistake. That's why we have safe houses and houses where they can get the kind of treatment they need. You are not counselors unless you are a licensed physician or a counselor that has a degree on your wall. You are not trained to handle that kind of dealing. But I did. And one girl turned into 2, 2 turned into 4, 4 turned into 6, 6 turned into 10, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And so I had always had this love for music. And the way that my trafficker got me, I had gone to a concert, as I said, in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I ended up down in Georgia. Well, I was doing this thing called open mic nights. You guys remember those? And this guy comes in, and I mean, he is like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy. If Brad Pitt and Mark Wahlberg could have a baby, that would have been him. Honey, hush. This guy comes in, and he starts talking to me, saying, "Wow, you're a wonderful singer. Can I take you to dinner?" You know, at first I brush him off. But every night that I'd go back to this club, he was still there. He kept hanging around. And it progressed into, you know, let me buy you this, let me take you to dinner, let me buy you this gift. And the grooming started. It's what we call a Romeo pimp. Finally, he said, "You know what? Your voice is so good that if you go home with me for Thanksgiving, My mama's got so much money, she'll pay for you to have an album recorded. So away went. Everything that a teenage girl with stars in her eyes wants. You know, you got the handsome guy, he's driving a muscle car. I don't remember if it was a Mustang, a Camaro, or a Thunderbird, but it was one of those get up and go cars. And I'll never forget, we got in the car and we drove away. Before we got all the way to Akron, his demeanor had already started changing. He had already started to be abusive. And I made up my mind, once I get to Ohio, that's it, I'm gone, I'm out of here. Little did I know what was waiting for me on the other side of those doors. When I got there, I walked in, and there was a woman sitting with 3 men at the table. The first words out of her mouth was, "Is this it?" And I thought, I am not an it, I am a person. And so I turned to try to go out the door. They grabbed me, dragged me up to the 3rd floor, shackled my right ankle to the floor. And there were things that I experienced that no one should ever have to live through. In my recovery, after the TBI I experienced, one of the things, some of the memories that came back was, I was in the attic with 3 victims. It was a sister, a brother, and myself. And we had a mattress that was about this thick each. And we had a bucket, that was our toilet. And when we ate dog food, slung to us on a paper plate. But one thing that came back to me in all of this trauma that I had suppressed in counseling was that the young boy had died. It started coming back to me. I remembered him turning blue and then slowly turning gray. And this may be triggering to some, so I apologize, but I literally started watching the rats eat him. That was just one of the things that came back. After counseling one night, I went home and I was watching this show called A Day with Death. It was on the History Channel. I thought, this can't be that bad. It's the History Channel, right? How many of you remember the dating game? Do you remember the dating game killer? There was a serial killer that actually went on the dating game. He had been arrested for raping an 8-year-old girl and served, I think, a minimum stupid sentence, something like 2 years. And they let him out. And he started across the country. Well, in my book, you'll read a part about a man that is strangling me almost to the point of death, brings me back, strangles me again to the point of death, brings me back. That was this guy's MO. And I'm watching this documentary about this guy, and the minute they showed the picture of him with long hair, I literally got up and ran to the restroom and was sick. It was him. He had made a deal with Daryl, my trafficker. He said, you can rape her, you can strangle her, but if you kill her, I'm going to kill you. That was just some of the stuff that we went through in that attic. There was a guy there named John. John had a 20-bag-a-day heroin habit. Pretty bad. So needless to say, he was slave labor. They had him like this. He was the one that fed the dog food. He emptied the buckets. He hosed us down when we got so bad. We stunk so bad they couldn't take it. He was the one that checked the chains at night to make sure that we stayed cuffed, that we couldn't escape. And I begged him for almost a year, John, please, 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 leave mine unlocked. Please leave mine unlocked. I can't take this anymore. I'm going to lose my mind. Please, I don't belong here. And he would just kind of grumble at me or say something like, you've lost your mind. Do you know what they'll do to me? You think you get treated bad? They'll kill me. And I'm not going to use the language he used, but they took me to this bar in Akron. And I'm sitting there on the bar stool, and you would think, you know, why doesn't she run? Well, remember, I go back to the PTSD and the Stockholm Syndrome. You know, by this time you are so traumatized, you can't think. You cannot think. Long story short, John leans over to me, like pretending like he's thumbing the ashes of a cigarette. And he said, when I say run out the front door, run. Well, I didn't trust him, and I didn't believe him. And I said, okay, just going along with it. A few minutes later, Daryl comes back to the table, and he said, man, we're gonna make a killing tonight. He said, John, are you about ready? And I said to him, I said, Daryl, can I please just go use the restroom? He was so high, so inebriated, and so out of it, that he grabbed me by the back of my hair and he said, you know what, I'm going to do what I should have done the first time I laid eyes on you in Georgia. I'm going to slit your throat and throw you in the dumpster. So he started dragging me down the hall back to where the van was, where the dumpster was parked. And these two women, about that time, they come out of the bathroom. They bumped into him. The knife dropped. They started tussling. And I thought, this is my chance. I wasn't going to go out the back, so I ran out the front. And I'm standing there, blood running down my neck, shirt ripped, freezing cold, don't know where I'm at, don't know where I'm going. And I hear this little voice say, are you Niki? And I just froze. And that was the voice of an angel called Chrissy, a woman who had never met me in her life, never laid eyes on me. But John had told a friend who had told a guy named Buster, and Buster and Chrissy came up with this plan. And that's how they got me out of there. And I stayed with Chrissy until it was safe for me to go back home to North Carolina. You have no idea what victims go through. The terror, the trauma, the nightmares that we have. You know, we go through times where we're on top of the world, and the next minute we think about, why am I even here? The trauma that we are put through is just, it's unspeakable. And it's happening every day all over the world. The trailer that was shown to you, we are trying to make this into a motion picture. And I know that it said 30,000 was the goal. The 30,000 is just to pay for the script. Once you've got a script, you can then take that script to any major production company in Hollywood. And if it's a good script, they'll pick it up and run. So please, 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 let's get the message out. I want to say something about Sound of Freedom. I think Sound of Freedom kind of, and I've heard a lot of survivors say this, a lot of victims say this, a lot of organizations say this. It set us back a little bit. Because unfortunately, as you saw from the statistics, it's not people in Brazil and Guatemala that are being, you know, yes, we still have the coyotes that bring people over. That is smuggling. But it used to be 1% of people that were snatch and grab. That is quickly changing. They're finding it's easier. Why am I going to pay $2,000 to bring someone to America when I could just go to the mall and get in somebody's ear and get her for free? Or get him for free? Because it happens to little boys too. You know, I had a whole idea of where I wanted to take this thing, and you know, it just didn't work out that way. Don't you love PowerPoints and computers? But before I go, there are some things that I want to leave you with. Some thoughts that I'd like you to really think about and ponder. I used to call my daddy a philosopher in overalls because he was just a good old country farmer from North Carolina. But he had a lot of sayings. And how he remembered all these things, I will never know, because he was not an educated man. I mean, he had some of the funniest quotes that I would say, and people would say, where did he get that? Like he would say, people can have as many degrees as the thermometer, but that doesn't mean they're wise. It's true. He would say, there goes a concrete mine. And I'd say, what are you talking about, Daddy? He said, all mixed up and permanently set. So many of those things that he passed on to me. And one of the lessons that he taught me before I end, I will never forget, we were working the farm one day. And how many of you grew up on a farm or was raised near a farm? So you know what I'm talking about when I say we walked the field. Well, my daddy and I, we walked the field one day because back then, you know, you checked the height of the plants, how it was growing, you know, if there was any pestilence or that sort of thing, and it was called walking the crops. And as we got around this edge of woods, I noticed in the back that there was all these tombstones. And I was just enamored. So I go forging my way back there with my little sneaky self. And I'm looking at these dates, and it's like 1700, you know, 1600, 1930, 1940. And I yelled, Daddy, come look at this. Come, you gotta see this. And he came back there, and he stood there for a minute, and he said, what's the most important thing on those headstones? And I said, their name. He said, nope. I said, the day they were born? Nope. I said, the day they died? He said, no. I said, there's nothing else on there. He said, yes, it is. He said, that dash. And I said, what do you mean that dash? He said, from the time they were born to the time they died, there's a dash in between that. He said, I want you to promise me something. Make your dash count. Make your dash count. What are you doing in this world? What good is it to sit up and take notice if all you're going to do is sit, right? Some of the things he said, and I'm going to close with this. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find the meaning of the suffering. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is prayers or progress. Working together is success. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Connections with other people affect not only the quality of our lives, but also our survival. And last but not least, with time and perseverance, hard coal is pressed into a diamond. Sand is made into a pearl. A worm turns into a butterfly. And where we are in this fight can change as much as we can with tenacity, consideration, commitment, and the giving of faith and support. This is not an us or them. This is not a me or mine. This is a we problem. We should be long, long past the point of having to teach awareness. We ought to be kicking butt in prevention. But we're where we are. So let's take what we've got, the pieces that we've got, the things that we've done, the people we know. Let's make a point to educate ourselves, to be involved enough to make sure that in this lifetime we see a dent in human trafficking, not modern day slavery, human trafficking. There are more people enslaved today, now, than there was during the time of Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to leave you with that. God bless.
First of all, where's Niki? Did she walk out the door? I don't see her anyway. Anyway, she is one of my survivor sisters, so this isn't going to be about my story. This is going to be about Sail of Freedom. However, what I do want to say that is not in here is that for me, this is like coming home. Because you see, I've been doing this work since 1988, okay? But the only organization that hired me, because I was a victim or I was a survivor of sex trafficking, was Sail of Freedom. And that was when they first opened up the very first safe house in 2013. I was with them about 4.5 years. I left to go do my own thing. And now I'm back again as of January 22nd. And so this is like coming home. And so we're so excited that you're here today. And I want to say a big shout out to all the men that are here. Thank you. Because you see, traditionally, when we do any kind of events that has to do around human trafficking, and especially having a conversation about sex trafficking, it's always the ladies that are here, right? But men, we need you in so many different ways. So Sail of Freedom, and we're going to talk a little bit about human trafficking, right? Human trafficking, well, she kind of like stepped ahead anyway. Human trafficking is the fastest growing industry worldwide. Right now it says here that it's a $99 billion industry, right? It is now actually up to $150 billion, at least by the research that I was sent this morning. Next slide, please. Now this map is very interesting about this map, and the reason why is because you see it talks about the concentrated areas of sex trafficking. So you see where it's red, that's where sex trafficking is the most predominant. And you can see on this slide, Florida. We're pretty much all red in Florida, aren't we? Are some of you like surprised by that? No? Now why are you not you guys over there, you know all this stuff. I want these people over here to talk to me for a moment, right? Why are you not surprised? Because of the borders? Because of the weather? Because we have every sporting outlet that there is to mankind? Because how many ports of call do we have? How many military bases do we have? But more importantly, it's our weather. Because you see, a lot of folks are very transit. So if you are being trafficked in some area that is very cold, it is not uncommon to be transported to Florida, or vice versa, depending on the weather. The other reason that I'd like to point that out is because you see, we forget. We forget that whenever there's a big sporting event or a convention or anything that might be going on within the state of Florida, that we're also going to have folks from outside the state that are going to come in. And for a lot of them, you remember that little term that people used to say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? Well, guess what? Florida's kind of known for that these days. All right, let's go ahead and let's move right along. This is a video. If you could click on it, it would be great. Now, before she even does that, this video is it's not about me, but it's very near and dear to my heart because I was trafficked in Tampa and all throughout Florida. And this is one of the areas that I also was trafficked. But this is one of our survivors from Sail of Freedom sharing just a little bit of her journey. I have to stay on the slide. You want me to do it? Okay. Now you gotta go back another slide. Jackie's coming. Yeah. It should be. You sure? Can you want to just try the mouse and just see? Okay, because it's on my computer, it's attached to it. All right, well then you're not going to see the video. So what the video is all about, right? That's why we upload everything and whatever. Okay, do a little bit different. All right, I have to admit, this is my first presentation now that I'm back at Sail of Freedom. So it's been a few years since I've done one for them, all right? So I'm not used to all these little intricacies that we have going on. But what the video really is about her talking about what her experience was and that she talked about, very similar to my story. She was a straight A student in high school. She participated in extracurricular activities. If you met her anywhere, you would never have any idea that this young teenager was being trafficked. Now I know we talk about selling people, and some folks are actually sold, but I really like to put plant this seed for you. She wasn't sold. I wasn't sold. We were rented out, right? We were rented out by the hour, maybe by the evening, maybe by the night, maybe by the day, the weekend, the month, whatever it might be. But for a lot of us, we went back home. Or we were in foster care and went back to our foster care. They're over there playing, so we'll just let them do that. All right, so let's go ahead, let's look at this root causes. We have to address what the root causes are. One of the root causes that is not in here is pornography. I like to start off with, there are two main root causes of why someone is very, very vulnerable and can potentially be a victim of human sex trafficking. One of them is childhood sexual abuse, and the other one is pornography. I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of survivors, and I will say this is just me personally. I have not personally worked with a survivor that was not sexually abused as a young child and there was no pornography involved, because they do go hand in hand. As a matter of fact, childhood sexual abuse and pornography are the training grounds. And I'll just let your mind kind of go with that. So we know that abuse is one of the root causes: physical, sexual, emotional. What happens then? You have shame, you have blame, you have low self-esteem. There's this vulnerability that is created. A lot of victims, they run away. Why? Because they can't take what's happening to them anymore. And especially if the same folks that you trust, the same folks that say, I love you, the same folks that are supposed to take care of you are the ones that are perpetrating against you, can you see why someone would want to run away? And then we talk about false promises. So Niki talked about her trafficker being a Romeo, right? Why was he a Romeo? He was like a boyfriend, right? Kind of like dated her, kind of like romanced her. But you will also see that it says well, it doesn't have gorilla put on there. I'm so sorry, because there's another term for a trafficker, and that's when they go from being very nice and friendly and the boyfriend and the Romeo to being someone really mean and nasty and horrific. But also what happens is a false sense of security. Right? We're repeatedly sold, rented out, we can't get out. Right? Folks a lot of times will say to us, so why didn't you just leave? Especially those of us that it was a family member that trafficked us.